Thanks for joining us today for the first ever Social Media Week. I'm Gabrielle Perret, Senior Media Advisor for the United States General Services Administration and lead for SocialGov, the federal government social media community of practice. Today is session 5, posting travel content when no one is traveling. Today we'll be hearing from Alyssa Zalenski, Digital Content Manager for Department of State's Bureau of Consular Affairs and the digital expert behind the popular Instagram travel account @TravelGov. To hear how the TravelGov team has adapted their Instagram strategy with travel being so restricted during the current COVID-19 pandemic. Alyssa began her career with State Department in 2011 after graduating with a master's degree in international affairs from American University. She has served in various roles in the Bureau of Consular Affairs, including serving as a press officer and her current role as a digital content manager for the @TravelGov social media platforms. Alyssa is originally from Chicago and currently lives and teleworks in Orange County, California with her husband and 2 kids. She enjoys running, snowboarding, camping, and travel. A quick reminder that the session today is being recorded. Captioning is available and will be sent out, a link to it will be sent out in the chat box by the Digitalgov team. If you have any technical issues during this chat, you can during this session, you can direct chat the Digitalgov team and they can help you out. We'll be taking questions at the end. We'll have 10 minutes at the end for questions for Alyssa, so be sure to send them to the chat box. And please remember to take the feedback survey that we send out after this session. So welcome. We are going to have a quick poll, start off with a quick icebreaker poll, Digitalgov team. Okay, here we go. First question. Did you adjust your content strategy during the current COVID-19 pandemic? Yes or no? And our second question is, have your agency's social media accounts taken a hit on impressions and your following during the pandemic? So let's see, we got some responses chiming in here. Looks like a lot of folks had to pivot their content strategy. Got a few more folks voting. Everybody cast your poll. Great. So did you adjust your content strategy during the pandemic? 84% of you said yes. My agency also included. We also had to pivot and adjust. 16% of you said no. That's really interesting. Second question was, have your agency's social media accounts taken a hit on impressions and your following during the pandemic? 38% said no, our accounts are performing about the same. 31% said our accounts are doing better than ever. And another 31% responded, I'm not sure. And nobody responded that our accounts have been negatively impacted. That's very interesting. So with that, I will turn the session over to Alyssa to tell us a little bit about how the TravelGov team pivoted during the pandemic.
Hey, Gabby, it's the other Gabby. I think
Hey.
Internet just, nope, she is back.
Great.
Hey
there, Alyssa.
Everyone, can everyone hear me? So sorry.
No problem, we can hear you, you're on.
I'm great. I'm having terrible internet issues today, of course, but we're going to power through. Okay, so first off, I run, as part of my team, we run the @TravelGov social media accounts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We saw a lot of change this year. Our main audience pre-COVID and post-COVID, but our main audience is U.S. citizens traveling overseas, traveling and living overseas. So as you can probably guess, we had to pivot our social media strategy on all of our accounts, including Instagram, when we went into lockdown, shutdown, whatever you want to call it, for the COVID-19 pandemic. If you want to go to the next slide. So today I'm going to go through 3 kind of different things that we saw this year. First off, our strategy pre-COVID was to provide information to US citizens traveling overseas and safety information, how to stay safe when you're abroad, tips for traveling, how, all that kind of stuff. And also US passport information. So how you apply for it or renew your passport, tips for submitting your application, passport photo quality, et cetera, et cetera. When COVID hit, people were not able to travel. A lot of borders closed. We had to pivot our strategy completely. We went a 180 because we were not telling Americans how to travel safely abroad, but rather to come back to the United States immediately, not delay and get home now. So first we did an enormous ad campaign on social media in conjunction with Facebook, especially to get information to Americans who were still overseas, who were basically trapped overseas. We had to run an enormous evacuation or repatriation campaign of over 100,000 Americans in every corner of the globe. Next, we had to figure out what kinds of campaigns, travel campaigns, would survive 2020. So what campaigns would we still go forward with that we may have planned for before, but just tweaked to the new normal of COVID-19 and traveling in a COVID-19 era. And then finally, we had to figure out what fun stuff we could still do on our accounts, especially on Instagram. Our TravelGov brand has been leaning towards engaging and fun travel content, and we had to figure out what was still appropriate to post in the COVID-19 era. Next slide. So first, we had a huge, like I said, we had a huge repatriation campaign of US citizens who were still overseas. We were actually gifted $500,000 from Facebook, which is crazy. If you're a government social media account, you know how much $500,000 is. And we had never seen money like that in our existence of TravelGov. And we were able to use that gift from Facebook to reach over 1 billion Americans. Can everyone still hear me? I feel like I froze. Are we good?
No, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay, great. So we were able to reach over 1 billion Americans with that money that we were gifted from Facebook. And the main messages that we wanted to put out there were to get home now. Like I said before, if you're overseas and American, we wanted to tell them to get home now. We wanted people to enroll in STEP. That's the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program that we have pushed for years as an outreach message for US citizens traveling and living overseas. Enroll in our Smart Travel.
Alyssa, we lost you on volume.
We good?
Yep, you're good.
So yeah, like I said, enroll in our Smart Travel Enrollment Program so that you will receive alerts, including health alerts, COVID-19 alerts directly to your email. And we will be able to get in contact with you for evacuation messages, like where people should meet, if they need to get on an evacuation flight, that kind of stuff. And then finally, we wanted to target our domestic audience as well. Domestic US citizens, telling them that their travel can wait. And if you are in the United States, to not leave the United States and to not travel, and your adventures can wait. Next slide. So here's some numbers. We were really happy to see these kinds of numbers because these kinds of things have never happened for us in the past. We were able to reach more than 284 million people with posts. People saw.
Alyssa, we lost you on volume again. We still lost you on audio.
Hi, Alyssa. Can you try one more time? This is the other Gabby.
Okay, folks, we'll give Alyssa just a second to call back in. I have a feeling she's going to be redialing back in. And Gabby F of Digitalgov, if maybe you can just keep an eye to make sure she gets admitted right into the room. In the meantime, maybe folks can chime in on the chat box and with any, any surprises maybe that have come out of the pandemic with your following. Did anybody gain a lot of followers? Did anybody gain a lot of impressions? Anybody's impressions change? I know with GSA, we, in the beginning of the pandemic, we definitely pivoted our content to focus on promoting authoritative COVID-19 messaging from both CDC and NIH and the Surgeon General. And those were mostly just straight retweets. Of course, we weren't creating at that time any content for GSA's COVID activities. It was still early on. So we had pivoted for our accounts to just retweeting, and yeah, I think we have never been able to make up for the impressions and the engagement that we were seeing. But I think in the prior year, it was gangbusters every month. We were kind of like beating our goals and surpassing our performance for the prior month. And so I think the pandemic kind of, well, it was interesting. And, we've slowly been recovering, and during the summer, we kind of transitioned a little bit at a time back to normal messaging, a normal mission-focused messaging with COVID, in between. I think we did that along with, when everybody else started doing that on social as well. So if you have, if anybody in the comment box wants to chime in on how they pivoted their strategy and how that affected. Hey, Alyssa, you're back. Do you have volume now? Let's see. On our screens, it shows that you're still muted. We had Gabby,
Okay,
Digitalgov. Oh, yeah, you're back. Okay, I was just chiming in a little bit about how GSA had pivoted our strategy when the pandemic hit. So maybe if you want to tell us a little bit. Looks like TravelGov, you guys had beat your performance pre-pandemic.
Yes. Yeah, again, apologies for all these tech issues, trying to get through all of our slides. So yeah, so we were able to reach a lot more people than we ever have before. We had way more engagements than we've ever had before. And our travel.gov or travel.state.gov website had, as you can see here on the slide, 1,993% increase in site visits, which is insane. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Another thing is we had, in a super successful metric of this campaign, is we had a lot of we had over 121,000 step enrollments, which is far more than we've ever really had before. And that was one of the main goals of our campaign. So we were super successful in that, in getting people to enroll in STEP. So I want to go to the next slide. So again, the ad campaign that we ran with the money from Facebook, we wanted to target first Americans overseas. You can see these are some of the ads that we ran. So again, US citizens come home now. The message was super clear, not beating around the bush at all. And then we were targeting specific countries too, like Americans in the Philippines. We're coordinating evacuation flights for Americans to come home from that country. And then we would only show those ads to the people who are on the ground in the Philippines through, targeting on Facebook. So it was nice to have that ability to do that as well. Want to go to the next slide? These are some of the ads that we ran on Facebook and Instagram and Reddit. Actually, we included Reddit. Even though we don't have a large presence on Reddit, we thought it would target the people that we wanted to see these ads. So we wanted people to enroll in STEP, like I was telling everybody before, so that we could contact them easily through our STEP program, and they would get a direct email about information about evacuation flights, about what to do if you're on the ground in a country where the borders have closed and flights have stopped. So yeah, these are some of the ads that we ran for that. Next slide. And then finally, like I said, we had a domestic campaign for Adventure Can Wait. So we wanted people to stay in the United States and not try and travel, not try and take that trip to the Bahamas that they were planning for, May 2020. And we wanted people to not get caught, because borders were closing without warning and flights were being canceled without warning. And we were still bringing people back on evacuation flights. So we didn't want people here in the United States to think that it was time for them to travel.
There was a brief period. There was a brief period too, and I remember all the airlines were just having like crazy sales on airfare, and it was like, wow, in 3 months you could buy $100 ticket to France. So I think that was really important messaging to go out.
Yeah, exactly. There were huge sales, right? And people were really upset that they had to cancel some of their vacations, that they had been saving up for and planning for a years, yeah. So yeah, we wanted to get that message across as well. All right, next slide. And then also on our Instagram account in particular, we wanted to spotlight the actual people in our embassies, our foreign service officers and local staff that were making the evacuations happen. And I don't know if anyone here has experience with evacuation efforts, but they're very complicated, especially when you're trying to do it for 100,000 Americans in all corners of the world at the exact same time. So we were happy to include a lot of content of the actual people who are making it happen. Here, I've just included a couple of examples. Our team in Moscow in the airport after they were successful in sending off their evacuation flight, one of theirs. And then on the left, we have our team in Bamako, who also was able to repatriate hundreds of Americans from Mali in that time. Next slide. All right, so the next thing, apart from our ad campaigns on repatriation that we were doing, our huge effort on repatriating Americans and telling them to stay in the United States if they were here, is we had to figure out what other kind of content we could put out after the repatriations kind of were dying down. We were getting a lot, we were winding down on evacuation efforts. So what else could we put out there, and what would Americans be looking for in this time frame? Next slide. First, we had to talk about passports. In March of 2020, we had to suspend passport operations. It was a big deal because all of the applications that were pending in March were kind of stuck in that pending for months because we had to draw down our services so much during that time frame. I just put a quick little timeline here of what happened so that you can get a little bit of a picture of what happened. Before COVID, our passport processing times were 4 to 6 weeks for routine and 2 to 3 weeks for expedited. That was kind of the benchmark. When we suspended services, we were down to very, very limited services, life and death cases only, for about 3 months. Yeah, March, April, May, June. Yep, 3 months. And that is a very long time in the passport world. In a normal year, we're processing about 20 million passports. So in 3 months, you can do the math. We had millions of passports pending since we had to shut down. We resumed limited services. That we had a phased approach, 3-phase approach in June, and then in August, we were able to, most of the agencies, the passport agencies, were at least in phase 1 of resuming services, and we were able to provide processing times again. But during that March to August timeframe, there was a lot of angst, and there was a lot of confusion from our customers on what was happening with their passport. Should they apply for their passport now? Should they wait? If their passport was pending, what was happening with it? Why wasn't it, being processed, et cetera, et cetera? There were just a lot of hairy problems. And the fact that in August, when we were able to go back to processing times commitments, it was now 10 to 12 weeks for routine service and 4 to 6 weeks for expedited. So there was just a lot of anger from the passport applying public, and we had to figure out how to message all of the information on passports. Next slide. So like I was saying, these are kind of the things that we were focusing on, and on the right here you can see some of the content that we published to get the message across, the graphic content, and along with the campaign. Like I said, we had a 3-phase opening approach, and we had to make sure that the public knew what was going to happen in each of the phases. We wanted people to know that their passport was going to take longer than it had pre-COVID. The processing times were just longer because we had limited staff in the agencies, and we were still working through a backlog that we had from the time when we had to suspend services. And then in the beginning, when we were in phase 1, we were not able to see people in person at counter service as we normally would pre-COVID for emergency cases, unless it was a life or death emergency. So we had to make sure that the public knew that. And like I said, there was a lot of backlash in chaos and confusion from people on social media wondering where their passport was and why hadn't we processed it yet. It is important too to note that we had a lot of information on our website on what was happening and how you could track your passport and know where it was in the process. However, we did end up answering a lot of the questions from people on social media because people just don't want to go to the website a lot of the times. They don't want to click through and read all of the information. They want an answer immediately. And so we used our TravelGov social media to answer a lot of those questions. Next slide. And these are some of the other campaigns that we decided were necessary to run in 2020 that would be beneficial apart from our passport campaigns. We had storm season safety. Back in, I don't know if anyone remembers, but in July and August, there was kind of a lull in COVID. Well, the numbers were down a lot of places in the country. And so people were in this false sense of security. And we thought people were going to do those trips that they wanted to do in the summertime. And summertime just so happens to coincide a lot with storm season and in the Caribbean. And so we wanted to make sure that people still knew that hurricanes were possible this year. And in fact, we expected that the hurricanes would be the worst ever because it is 2020 and that's what happens, right? In 2020, we were lucky in that we didn't see enormous amounts of hurricanes this year. But we wanted to make sure that if you did decide to travel, you knew that there was a risk. Apart from COVID, there was also a risk of getting caught in a hurricane. Right now, we're actually running a holiday travel campaign as well, because we know that even in a pandemic, Americans will not be deterred from traveling over the holidays, even if we tell them not to. So we want to make sure people are aware that you might get caught, your travel plans might be disrupted due to who knows what with foreign borders closing and whatnot, spikes in COVID cases. And we want to make sure people are aware of that and know the risks and are informed before they make decisions about traveling. Next slide. And finally, I want to go quickly through some fun stuff that we decided was still appropriate to post on our accounts this year. I just put an example here about one of the things that we put out. I don't know if people remember this meme that was kind of going around a couple months ago, how it started, how it's going. So that's just an example. We like to jump on, you know, trending memes. And back when we were doing evacuation efforts and stuff, it seemed like the world was very serious, and it was a very fine line to know what was appropriate to post on our accounts and how it would be how people would take it. Next slide. A couple of more examples. We've posted some other trending meme content. We ventured back into the world of posting puns on our captions. We know that from TSA, we take a note from TSA's account when they use so many puns in their captions, people seem to love it. And we didn't know if it was appropriate in a pandemic world to continue to be lighthearted and when so many people were suffering. However, our content that is light and engages with people and invites our audience to participate in our posts, such as the National Pastry Day post with the donuts. People love that stuff, even though there's so much drama happening all over the world. And we have been successful in continuing to post lighthearted content such as this year. Next slide. Some of the stuff that we do on Instagram a lot are supposed to elicit direct engagement from our followers. So we want people to interact with our content on Instagram, especially in the stories. And we feel like it really hammers home outreach messages that much more when people are taking quizzes, when people are doing trivia, that kind of stuff. So these are just some of the examples of what we have posted this year. One of the biggest successful stories that we've run is where can Americans travel? Because the US passport is so different now, we can't go everywhere that we used to be able to go with a US passport. So doing a quiz, where can Americans travel, and asking, can you travel here right now? And people, you'd be surprised that nobody seems to really know where Americans can travel right now. So that has been super successful and well received from our followers. Passport Mythbusters, trivia, would you rather, word scrambles, anything to kind of get people involved with our content. We kind of eased back into it as COVID, as our pandemic and new reality settled in, and it's been very well received with our followers. Next slide. And just some examples is what I was talking about, like where can Americans travel? If you follow TravelGov on Instagram, we post these kinds of quizzes a lot, and you can test your knowledge on different topics, especially passport stuff, travel, US citizen travel stuff. Yeah, next. So this is just an example of something that a reoccurring story that we've put out this year. Next slide. Like I was saying, we had some word scramble stories. So just fun stuff to get people engaged, you know, guessing what words, travel related words. And next slide. And this is one of the stories that we had to adapt for this year. We used to do a reoccurring where in the world. So we would give people clues and you would guess where these photos were taken in the world. And we had to do home edition this year. So where in the United States, because it's a fine line. We didn't want to seem as though we're encouraging people to travel in when there's so much risk in traveling right now. But we also wanted to continue to post engaging content, and we are TravelGov. That is our brand. So We did Home Edition, Where in the World Home Edition, and we spotlighted the hometowns of foreign service officers. So it was also raising the profile of foreign service work, and that is another goal of our accounts, is to raise the profile of what we do. Next slide. That's it. I am here for questions. Again, so sorry about all of the tech issues. I hope that you were able to get the key messages of the presentation, even though I was in and out. So let me know what questions you have.
That's great. We got some great questions coming in on the chat box. And I just wanted to comment, I think a few others had commented too, that like, wow, your Instagram stories are great. I think I just picked up a few ideas from those to steal for the GSA account. Those are great. Yeah. I think you have some really great ideas too on your slides. I hope that you'll share them with the group afterwards. Some great ideas for Instagram on engaging your audience with different themes. Like, I think you all had used Where Is It Wednesday before. Was that your account? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we picked that up to also highlight federal buildings around the country. We got that from your account. So that's a lot of fun content. Riley at NISC asked, do you use any third-party tools to sort through all of the passport service backlash? What are you guys using to
third-party tools like analytics tools?
Yeah, or any social media management tools?
Right, so we use Hootsuite. That's the platform that we are allowed to use for our accounts. So Hootsuite does have better analytics tools nowadays. And for just, you mean responding to people in the volume, we did have to draw in more people on our team during the height of COVID and the evacuations and the passport backlash. That kind of all happened at the same time. So we actually were in 24/7 duty shifts on my team, and we were covering our accounts around the clock, and we would do 5-hour shifts so that as not to get burned out. And there's usually 3 people on our team running the account. And we drew in, at the height of it, I believe there were there were at least the 3 of us plus 5 others that were able to come in, and we would assign people questions in Hootsuite, and we were able to keep track of it that way.
Wow, it's a big jump in staff. How did you respond? How did your team respond to comments, if they're positive or passport service backlash comments on your post? Do you respond to all comments? How do you take that on? What's your approach?
Yeah, our approach has always been on TravelGov to respond to everything that is a legitimate comment, even if you've seen it 100 times before. That's always what we have taught in our trainings, and always how we think about engagement, because lots of times in a crisis situation, and we can talk about the evacuation crisis and also the passport crisis, I think those 2 crises happened at the same time, but they were both distinct audiences, so we had to do both at the same time. And yeah, we made a point to respond to as many people as we possibly could, even if they were just venting, because a lot of times people want to know that A, there's a real person behind the account, B, that they're heard at least, and C, if there's any sort of movement or updates, people want to know those updates. So yeah, we've always thought that direct engagement, as much as possible, has been the right way to handle a crisis situation.
It's a great question. Sarah has asked in the chat box, how do you all judge when was the appropriate time to get the fun content back? And how did you know if it was getting a good reaction and not feeling tone deaf? I think all of us must have been feeling that same thing at one point with getting our content back to normal.
It was dicey. So we felt kind of as the evacuation efforts were slowing down and people were adjusting to our new normal, which is terrible, right? But it is the new life, right? That we could ease back in slowly into content that was more lighthearted, we were very, very slow about posting funny content or whatever. I will say I took a risk with that Where Can Americans Travel reoccurring story. The first time I posted it as a story, I was worried that it would get backlash, like from people that were upset that their passport could no longer go places, from people that were like, why are you encouraging Americans to travel? You know, just there's a lot of trolls on the internet, a lot of snark, and it actually went really, really well. And once I had that under my belt, under our belts, and I was a little more willing to take a risk, a calculated risk with posting, like pushing the line a little bit more. So I think once you have kind of a taste of how your audience takes a story that is pointedly saying, look, the passport has changed, right? Americans can't go places anymore because of the pandemic, and having more confidence with that win, then I was more willing to venture into more of the content that we used to post before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If Alyssa didn't get to your question in the chat, her email is up here on the screen, zalenskiap@state.gov. Shoot her an email. And be sure that you're following TravelGov on social channels, and be sure to sign up for the STEP notifications too. I had signed up for those when I was a Peace Corps volunteer when I served in Kenya. Those were very important when you travel, and I've made sure I've done so whenever I've traveled before. So thank you, Alyssa. Thanks everyone for joining us today.